Hey, Chris, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you, Chris. Well, Chris, story that I thought as we end the year, even in the middle of impeachment and all this that you guys are on, I'm looking at this lawsuit against Schiff, was what happened here with the phone numbers, Nunes, Giuliani, and the rest of it. You know, impeachment and other things are so consequential. This kind of blew by us. Talk about the lawsuit and the importance of this.
Well, you have Mr. Schiff exercising his authority, may not even be lawful the way in which he conducted himself, but nonetheless, they issued subpoenas to phone services to obtain records and documents about the private phone calls of people like the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, Congressman Nunes, John Solomon, who's an excellent reporter, journalist, and other attorneys as well. Jay Sekulow, another one of the president's attorneys, Victoria Tenzing, Joe DeGeneva. So these are private persons. And, of course, Congressman Nunes, they went after his personal private telephone and then published that information, the phone numbers and the calls that were made. They at least we don't believe they obtained the actual contents of the communications, a transcript of the call, but nonetheless, sort of the external metadata of who was calling who at what time, where, when,
Right,
the
right,
facts around the
exactly.
call. It's a pretty outrageous abuse of the private communications of persons. One could attorney-client communications between people like Giuliani and Sekulow with the President of the United States. This is an extraordinary overreach. So we asked Schiff to provide copies of exactly what it was that he requested. And, of course, he failed to comply. And so we've sued them because we need to understand what he was doing and how he was doing it. He's interested in purportedly a fair, transparent, accounting of the facts. Well, get in line, Mr. Schiff. You're due as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, if you weren't doing that, I don't know who would be, because, we're moving on to the big moment, the drama of impeachment, now the Senate trial. But
Maybe not. Who knows, right? We
well,
don't
yeah.
even know that that's true.
Well, but that was just chilling to me. But, with the other events, they kind of overtook it. And you can't be allowed to get away with this without explaining and justifying this. That's the part that was chilling. Now, you've
Agreed.
also sued, I'm looking at this dateline, December 26th. Judicial Watch sues the CIA and DOJ for the communications of. Why are you doing that?
Well, he shows up in Mr. Mueller's report. He is purportedly, based on a few different press sources, he is purportedly the whistleblower in this whole Ukraine manufactured saga. And if in fact he is, and of course we know he's documented in the Mueller report with respect to meetings between John Kelly, President Trump, the Russian foreign minister. There's a footnote 468 which makes reference to him. Well, then we want to know what his communications were. He was on the National Security Council staff as a detailee. The National Security Council traditionally, historically, has subjected itself to the Freedom of Information Act. Certainly the CIA is subject to FOIA, as is the Justice Department, and he was supposedly in communication with both of those government agencies. And so the public has a right to know exactly what he was doing and what he was communicating. There's some, very curious connections of various persons. We went and looked at the White House visitor logs, again, publicly available information, and we detailed those persons that he was meeting with. That includes somebody like Alexandra Chalupa, who was a contractor hired by the Democratic National Committee to work on Ukraine issues back in 2016. What's he doing meeting with her? So it's a fair question. These are publicly available records and documents under the Freedom of Information Act. We filed a request. He's just a government employee. All this whistleblower nonsense has to do with, first of all, you have to be a legitimate whistleblower, and he does not meet that definition. Secondly, the records and communications he had with other government agencies are public records and documents that are available under the law. So we asked for those, didn't get a response, and so we're sued to get them.
What is Judicial Watch? What do you see now headed into 2020? You just laughed, Chris, when we said, at some point Mitch McConnell's going to deal with Nancy Pelosi on this. I think it's pretty obvious that we are going to have some kind of vote. It will be it won't be to remove the president. What is Judicial Watch centered on now at this point post-impeachment?
Well, great segue. Minutes ago, I just posted an opinion piece on Daily Caller. The title of it is Pelosi Snubs the Constitution with Senate Obstruction. And then I talk a little bit about Pelosi's decisions and her timetable. You'll remember that the House made all sorts of noise about there was an urgent, compelling, dire threat to the Constitution.
Right.
Every second that ticked by was another, step towards the cliff kind of a thing. The Republic was at risk. So they raced to do this impeachment in 12 weeks. Other impeachments have lasted months. The process here is so twisted and so out of control, it's hard to describe. But as soon as they passed their articles, they went away for, Christmas vacation. So it's a little tough to choke down, how dire and urgent the situation is when they walk away.
No, without a doubt. And, Mitch McConnell may be slow moving, but he does snap. And inside the Senate, I think he'll deal with this effectively. Now, if people want to take the treasure trove of stuff that you and Tom Fenton put out in Judicial Watch every day, or to be supportive, what are the best places to find Judicial Watch?
It's one-stop shopping. Just go to Judicial Watch, altogether one word, judicialwatch.org, O-R-G, and you can see just tons and tons of interesting material. The records and documents that we obtain using the Freedom of Information Act, stuff that we've obtained by suing the government, going to court and forcing these government agencies and departments to produce records to us by federal court order. Sadly, that's often required. The only time the government kind of, snaps to is when a federal judge orders them to release these records. But the reason you even know about Hillary Clinton's email server, or the reason that you've been able to read the text messages and emails of Strzok and Page and the rest, in very, very large part, is only because of the work of Judicial Watch.
That is, I was going to ask you some of the biggies. That's exactly right. I mean, it is the go-to. So thank you. Thanks for joining us in Philadelphia, Chris, so much in 2019, and even bigger stuff with Judicial Watch in 2020.
Great to be on. Thanks very much.
Dom Giordano, weekdays 9 till noon on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT.